Coming up on today's show, we've got summertime reading recommendations.
Welcome to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for readers and writers of gay romance fiction. If you can read it, write it, watch it, or listen to it, these two guys are going to talk about it. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Adams and Will Knaus.
Welcome to episode 34 of Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast.
I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com.
And I'm Will from WillKnaus.com.
Hey there.
Hello to you.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing good.
Good to hear.
Glad to be here for week 34.
Yeah.
So, I guess we should start off with our correction.
Yes, someone made a boo-boo.
I made a boo-boo, but you didn't correct it.
Oh, please. Like I can remember.
So, in last week's episode, after Charlie David's interview, I mentioned, 10 years since Dante's Cove, blah, 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 and that Kevin was still stuck in the mirror. Turns out it's Toby that's stuck in the mirror, not Kevin. And thanks to OIC Ozzy over on Twitter for the heads up on that. Appreciate it. Went back, look at the DVD, and you're like, yeah, sure enough. Toby's in that mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well. What are you going to do?
He's still stuck there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry I goofed that up. Yes?
I was going to throw you a scintillating and snappy segue.
Please do.
So, Jeff, how is your writing going?
It's good.
Was that a good segue?
That was a good segue.
Yeah, actually, kind of sucked. But...
I'm still editing on the Mackinac Island story, which, hey, I gave it a title since we recorded last. Now called Somewhere on Mackinac. Which matches up nicely with the whole Somewhere in Time theme and being on the island and all that stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
So the goal is that you get it this week. I've got about 40 more pages on my paper edit to do because I'm one of these writers who prints it all out and marks it all up. Because I definitely see things there that I don't see when I'm reading it on a screen. Just the way my eyeballs work, I guess.
Yeah.
So once I get that cleaned up, I will give it to you.
Sounds good. I look forward
on
to
paper,
reading.
So that you can mark it all.
Yeah. I look forward to reading it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to your reaction too.
It's going to be fun.
I've enjoyed both writing it and reading it, so it's good that I enjoy reading it. So, if I don't enjoy it, nobody else will probably.
True. Good.
I did get a rejection this week. I submitted a story to an anthology, and it got turned down for the anthology, but the encouraging bit that came back was that they really liked the characters, really liked the story, and encouraged me to expand it up to the $15K minimum to get it published as a short on its own. So I'm going to be looking at that because I do like this story. It only needs about 4,000 words added to it, so it's only like a couple scenes. And I think there's pretty easily some additional stuff I can do with those guys. I think I was writing short to help, get it to anthology size, which had to be under 12. So be messing with that probably while you're reading Somewhere on Mackinac.
Okay.
Also, a couple of really nice reviews this week that I was just really like, oh, that's so sweet, over. Jess, who's a podcast listener, left an awesome review of the Hat Trick Box set on Facebook and Goodreads. So thank you for that, Jess. Very much appreciate it. So glad you liked Simon and Alex. I always like it when the boys find new fans. It's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And Jason over at Joyfully J gave me 5 stars for Make the Right Choice. A little bittersweet on that review because it was Jason's last review for Joyfully J. After 2.5 years and 170 reviews, that boy read a lot of books.
Yes, he did.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, he did.
But Jason's been a longtime fan and supporter of Hat Trick, which I very much appreciate. And he does great reviews there. I mean, everybody, not to call him out specifically, because Joyfully J is a fantastic site and good reviews, but he'll be missed because he had good insight on stuff. Nice guy, and hopefully whatever he moves on to next that is taking him away from this site will be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So, you found some stuff in Entertainment Weekly you wanted to share this week.
Well, you know me. I keep my finger on the pulse of pop culture and entertainment news.
Indeed.
I wanted to get your opinion of, apparently, there are 2 new phrases that are trending in reference to fictional characters. recently, the hashtags "Give Elsa a Girlfriend" has been trending, along with "Give Captain America a Boyfriend."
Okay.
So, as we know, they are working on Frozen 2
Yes.
now. And there is a contingent of fans who would like Elsa to have a girlfriend.
Okay. Sure. I mean, why not? I mean, Disney has often shown that they might be willing to expand in that direction periodically. I don't know if they're going to do it with one of their most major tent poles, and I don't know that it necessarily serves the story. You can't just give Elsa a girlfriend for the hell of it. There has to be some aspect to the story that makes that work really well. And I kind of feel the same with Captain America, too. I mean, actually, I'm a little more hesitant on the Captain America side because I often like my superheroes to kind of connect to their comic book alter egos, and I don't think he's had a boyfriend in the comics, per se.
Well, do you think, strictly speaking from a storytelling and cinematic perspective in respect to Captain America, do you think characters that have up to this point been, the romantic lives have not been explored, do you think that it's a realistic option?
Well, I mean, if you look at superhero romances over time, it always gives you that plot point of, oh my goodness, my significant other's been kidnapped, I have to go get them. So there's something you could do with that. But I mean, certainly in the Avengers movies, and I take that whole universe, the only romantic relationships I believe that we've seen are with Tony Stark and Pepper Potts and Hawkeye, and we saw his family in one of those movies, and whatever's going on between the Hulk and what's her name? Mm-hmm. Captain America has never really had that connection, except maybe tangentially with Agent Carter.
Mm-hmm. I think, well, okay, in the case of Captain America, I totally ship Cap and Bucky. There is total chemistry there, 100%. If he was ever going to have a boyfriend, it would have to be the Winter Soldier and nobody else.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Do you think, I think in Cap's case, he, I think he loved Agent Carter, perhaps in a platonic way. I think
she might have been more for him than he was for her. Well, for sure, as we know in the TV series.
And I think Cap has come off more almost asexual. It's like relationships aren't even on his radar. On the other hand, Elsa, there's really no indication of what her preference in romantic partners might be.
Yeah.
Her sister certainly had her hands full in the first movie with several men screwing her over. But she
landed with the right guy eventually.
So I think it would be nice if these two beloved characters had a significant and meaningful romantic pairing, as long as it made sense within the context of whatever stories end up being told with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. I don't think you do it just to do it. I think you've got to... If you're going to give Cap a relationship, there's got to be a good reason behind it. And if you're going to give Elsa a relationship, it's got to work for the story being told, whether it's man or woman or big green giant,
In any case, I'm rooting for both of them.
Absolutely.
So this week, here in the U.S., two of our beloved reality TV competition franchises had their finales.
Indeed, yes.
And as most of our listeners well know, as we've been blathering on and on in recent weeks, The Voice ended, and the current season of Dancing with the Stars recently ended as well. And they ended the way they were supposed to.
Yes, they did.
That's not always the case.
To be fair with The Voice, I think if any of those 4 had won, that would have been okay. Mm-hmm. But Allison won, and that's really the way it was supposed to be.
Yes, it was.
She did some killer stuff her last 2 nights on the show, between the song that she wrote, Original, which was a great twist on The Voice this year that the 4 finalists had to write their own songs. And she also did a tremendous version of Somewhere from West Side Story for one of her final performances. So congratulations, Allison. Get that album out soon. Dancing with the Stars, of course, Niall won, and that was exactly how it was supposed to be. There wasn't really another option there. Yes, Ginger and MMA Girl were great, whatever her name was. As our listeners well know, we really only watched Niall and very little else on the show this season. His Sounds of Silence number on Monday night's show was outstanding. Mm-hmm. He really brought it right there toward... I mean, he was great all season, but the last 2 or 3 weeks, he really brought some extraordinary stuff to the dance floor with PETA. So congratulations to them as well.
Yeah.
And that wraps up that sequence of reality shows. And next, it's Ninjas and Spartans.
Yeah, we are fans of American Ninja Warrior. I really grok that show. It's my thing. It's my jam. I love it to pieces. So I'll be definitely tuning in for the rest of the summer for that.
Oh, yeah.
There's also a new reality team competition show called Simply Spartan. It's based on the Spartan races that take place all over the country and I believe around the world.
Yeah.
And that's a new show, so we'll definitely be checking that out. That looks interesting.
We've been watching some Spartan races on NBC Sports Network, and those are interesting. And this Team Spartan thing looks interesting, and it's paired with ninjas, so why not? Yeah. Some other good stuff that we're looking forward to in the summer that we'll either talk about or not on the show. Angie Tribeca comes back on June 6th. And if you did not watch that first season on TBS, that was a hoot. It was ridiculous in the vein of like Airplane. But yet I can watch it because I'm not a big fan of the Airplane movies, but this was somehow smart. Steve Carell and his wife executive produced this thing, and it's a hoot. Unreal's back on the 6th also. So we're looking forward to that. We probably talk about that a little bit on the show, depending on where the storylines go this year. And I'm looking forward to Mr. Robot coming back in July for my evil, techie, hacker, dark show. Yeah. So, shall we hear from Greg over at the Bureau of General Services Queer Division to find out what he's got to say about author Sarah Schulman?
Yeah, let's see what he has cooking up.
So we welcome back to the podcast Greg from the Bureau of General Services Queer Division in New York City. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, good to be here.
So you've been reading a book from Sarah Schulman. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
It's called The Cosmopolitans. Here's a little visual. It's a novel that takes place in New York in 1958. And we're told that right off the bat. And it takes place mostly on 10th Street in 2 apartments. So it has a very specific location and time. It's 10th Street between University and Broadway in 58, which I know from my art history background is an interesting time. There were a lot of little galleries sprouting up there, and that gets mentioned a bit. This burgeoning avant-garde scene in New York. And about that history I can bring to it, but she definitely roots you in it with the details she gives. Something I didn't realize till this morning. I haven't actually finished the book completely. I'm nearing the end, and I just noticed today that there's a note on style in the back, and I thought, oh, well, I guess it's kind of good to not know that going in, and I don't know how much I want to say. I don't want to spoil the book for any of your viewers, but it's basically, she said she's looking at 2 novels. One is by Balzac called Cousin Bet, which is kind of funny because I read that book years ago, and the main character in the book is Bet, and she is referred to by other characters as Cousin Bet. And It sounded familiar, but somehow I didn't catch that. I read that a long time ago. And the other book is James Baldwin's Another Country, which actually takes place in, it's a similar setting because it's late 50s, early 60s, New York, also in Greenwich Village, Bohemia, and there are a lot of similarities. I mean, they're kind of deep psychological studies of the primary characters. So you have Cousin Bet, who is from Ohio, and moved to Ohio, small town Ohio, because of a family being shunned by her family for refusing to kind of go along with a charade when this man she had a relationship marries her cousin, and everyone wants her to play nice instead of saying, "But he seduced me." So they shun her, and she flees to New York in it's 1928. So she comes right before the big crash. And she befriends this guy. She works at a diner. She befriends someone her own age. She's in her early 20s, I guess, named Earl. And he's black. He's from North Carolina. And we learn that he was shunned by his family and fled because he was found having sex with another man. So it's a black gay man and a white straight woman making it in New York, or surviving in New York. And most of the novel takes place in 58, but we know that they have this 3-decade history of friendship. So it's a fascinating. The characters are fascinating. The time period, at least for me, is fascinating. I think for most people. I mean, in American history and world history, post-World War is when our world was shaped in many ways, Before that, it feels so distant. But then if you look right after the war, 50s, 60s, 70s, it still feels, well, maybe because I've studied it a lot, it still feels very current to me. It seems like our world. I think that's part of the fascination with something like Mad Men, is that kind of coming into our current way of seeing things, the marketing. And actually that plays a role too, because Bet ends up working at an ad agency. So it's that it is about that America, the consumerist America that's coming into being, and this kind of bright new future in a way, but also the manipulation that comes along with advertising and marketing. So we see that in their personal lives as well as in the culture at large.
Interesting. That sounds like a really interesting book, and I've been reading one other historical recently called Jazz Moon. In fact, Joe Okonkwo is going to be in your store on June 8th, I think it is, and so I may have to pick this one up because it kind of bridges that, because his book's back in the late 1920s, and knowing this relationship, bringing it forward into the 50s, that could be interesting. Yeah. I was an art historian before opening the bureau, so I love history. I love historical novels. I love learning about the history through the novel. I like reading, nonfiction history as well, but it's interesting to, flesh it out in a different way when you're able to peer into someone's head. And it is, it's that kind of novel where the narrator sees all in a way and is sympathetic to whomever she's talking about at a given time. But you get to see the machinations within their mind, what's going on. It's also interesting to me because I read Sarah's nonfiction work. This is the first time I'm reading her fiction. She's written a lot. This is her 17th book. Oh, wow. Okay.
And fiction and nonfiction. I think the first book I read, which I got out here as well, is The Gentrification of the Mind, Witness to a Lost Imagination, which came out right about when we started the Bureau. So it was like, I met her, this was a book that was getting a lot of attention, and I read it, and I was very impressed with it. It makes sense, I am able to see like her thinking in this novel related to that book, related to other things that I've heard her talk about that I've read, and I see a lot of themes coming together, and so much of them have to do with family and friendships, with betrayal, and with healing and how healing takes place, and the need to recognize what has happened in order for that healing to take place, and for individuals to see each other and hear each other, and really take account of what has happened. So there's so many lines in there. I'm like, this could be in her nonfiction as well. I see those kinds of themes coming together. Another book that she wrote, nonfiction, is Ties That Bind: Familial Homophobia and Its Consequences, which is a really great read. I mean, any queer person, most queer people, I think, should be able to relate to it, unless they are so lucky that they just have a wonderful, open, loving family with, but most of us have experienced some kind of rejection, disappointment, the sense that somehow we failed our families, our parents, maybe originally feeling we failed ourselves. So I see some themes in the book and how people are relating to each other, and then like little nuggets of psychological insight that she brings to bear on the situation in the book. But so much of it is about, we have to acknowledge what has taken place. You cannot move forward if you don't recognize that. So she has a book coming out this fall, which I meant to write the whole title down, but it's called Conflict Is Not Abuse, and nonfiction. And it's this idea that you have to have conflict in order to resolve things, that, if there's a resolution needed, there must be a conflict, and therefore that must be addressed. But I see this consistency in the fiction and the nonfiction, with regard to that, this need to speak truth, uncomfortable truths maybe, and to sit with them. She's Jewish. She's born and raised in New York. Another book that she wrote is called Israel, Palestine, and the Queer International. And anyone who is remotely awake knows the Israel sensible hysteria. It's very, people either really want to talk about it or really don't want to talk about it. And certainly, if you're Jewish, it's like you're going to talk about it. It's unavoidable. And she does it really well in that book. So she's interested in conflict. She's interested in the ways that people deal with or don't deal with it. The way people often shun others because they don't want to confront something about themselves. So she addresses those, like I said, in nonfiction as well, and knowing her just makes it more interesting for me. Like, oh yes, that's very much her thinking, and it's thinking that I happen to agree with. I'm with her for the most part, and saying like, yeah, these are very basic truths. You need to be honest with yourself. You need to be honest with other people. You need to look at what's really going on. You need to hear people. You need to confront things that might make you very uncomfortable, and say, why is this making me uncomfortable? What is it that I'm afraid of?
All right. Well, we'll link up to all of Sarah's books in our show notes so people can go pick those up. And of course, we'll link out to the Bureau too, so people can find you guys. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch up again with you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thanks, Greg, for giving us that recommendation. We'll link up to all of Sarah's stuff in the show notes so you guys can find it. So, as we do this, Memorial Day. This episode comes out on Memorial Day, which means it's the unofficial beginning of summer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so what better thing to do than to talk about some book recommendations for your summer reading, if you're at the beach or taking a vacation or just coming up with a book to, stay out of the hot weather in your air conditioning.
So what do you have to recommend, sir?
So I have 5 books. We each have 5 books. My stack, and I believe yours too, these are not new releases. We kind of went back into the archives.
Did you go retro? I went completely retro. Yeah, you kind of did.
Pretty much went retro.
No, there's some new stuff. Mine's more retro than yours is. So go with your first. Go with your first one.
That's true. I mean, but none of this stuff came out this year. Let's put it that way. So my first one, I kind of went way back into gay fiction history with Gordon Merrick's what's typically known as the Peter and Charlie trilogy, and it starts with The Lord Won't Mind. These are some of the very first books that I read when I came out because Will said you should read these because they're awesome, and they are. They're lushly romantic, although they don't follow the typical romance tropes per se. But these two, they get together, they travel around the world, they do what I would consider almost Gatsby lifestyle in a way. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, okay.
It's not all happiness for them, but the love that they share and the way that it grows through these books makes it for a totally engrossing read. They've recently come out, well, I say recent, last year they came out in ebooks, so you can get them finally for your e-readers if that's your thing. But if you do like romance and you're okay with it not following the traditional tropes, read these books. They're awesome. And I think they make for good summertime, almost soapy kind of reading.
Most definitely. Okay, my first choice is one of the classic Kings of the Summer Beach Read. I want to recommend Sidney Sheldon. And the book that I highly recommend is probably... I don't know what the word is his
opus.
His magnum opus is The Other Side of Midnight. They don't get any bigger or soapier than this one. I love this book to pieces. I read it years and years ago. It still reads incredibly well. It follows two different women, seemingly that have absolutely nothing to do with each other, but life and fate intervenes, and it brings them together, and it's an amazing book. It also was turned into an utterly ridiculous 1977 movie that incidentally came out, I believe, the same summer as Star Wars. And Fox was counting on The Other Side of Midnight to be their big hit that year.
They got that wrong, didn't they?
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? So I highly recommend anything, really, by Sidney Sheldon, but Other Side of Midnight, if you want something big and juicy and soapy, you cannot go wrong with this.
All right. So, steering a little towards YA for my second choice. It's hard to go wrong with either David Leviathan or John Green. And hey, they teamed up for a book called Will Grayson, Will Grayson. Fancy that. This is a very interesting book. You've got two teenage characters, both named Will Grayson, who live in separate towns, but they are brought together for one bizarre evening with all of their friends. I don't want to give away too much because this was a trippy read because you had these two characters who are very alike but yet not alike. It is some of these guys' writing. I mean, you could pick out some of where the John Green-isms are, where the David Leviathan-isms are. There's also a great sequel to this that is the Tiny Cooper story, which was released, I think it was late 2015, and is actually in the form of a musical script, as if it was done for a musical stage. There's also a big musical in here, too, which is not a bad thing. So pick this up. Delightful YA. If you're a fan of either of these authors and you haven't read this, you got to get it. And then this is your entree to either of them, although it seems hard to believe that most folks haven't read John Green at this point. Highly recommended. That's true. You have not read that book, have you?
Technically, I have not read it.
But no. You've seen the movie.
I've seen the movie. So there you go.
Yeah. So give this a shot. Good, very good YA right here. And again, with these two authors, also hard to go wrong with any of their books that you might pick up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for my second choice, I would like to recommend the queen of the beach reads, last year when Jackie Collins passed away, it hit me surprisingly hard. It really, really, really sad. I love Jackie. She's an amazing woman, and I really admire what she was able to accomplish in her life and her career. And her books are fucking amazing. Let's just put that out there. So I highly recommend picking up any of Jackie's books. They're phenomenal. You could always go classic with something like Hollywood Wives. That's a great book. If you want to... What was the word I just came up with?
Magnum opus?
Magnum? Well, okay, I don't think that really applies to this... in this particular
That's
instance.
an epic series, is what that is.
But if you really want to dig into Jackie Collins and what she's all about, check out the Lucky Santangelo series. Lucky Santangelo is essentially the fictional doppelganger of Jackie herself. She's sort of like everything that Jackie is and was and wanted to be. The first book in the Lucky Santangelo series is Chances. It's a big, fat, crazy, soapy book, and most of the book follows Lucky's father, Gino Santangelo. And Jackie Collins was fascinated by Mario Puzo and The Godfather, and Chances is essentially her kind of sort of extra sexy, glitzy take on that sort of Italian-American gangster epic. Because it follows Gino and his rise to fame as a gangster, and then his life as a successful hotelier in Las Vegas, and it covers Lucky's early years. So give Chances by Jackie Collins a try, if you haven't already.
That's a good series. I remember you got me to read that series.
Good stuff.
And it's really good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
So you can't have summer without a superhero. And we have the aptly titled Hero by Perry Moore. This is another YA book. You've got 16, I think he's 16. He's a teenager, Tom. Typical teenager, basketball player, goes to school. He is the son of a fallen superhero who has been left kind of as an outcast. His mother's been kidnapped because of the things that went down with his dad. But he discovers that not only is he growing up gay, but he's also starting to manifest superpowers. And he doesn't quite know what to do with that, but he's actually recruited into the league where his father kind of didn't want him to end up. It's an amazing story of this young man growing up, coming to grips with his superpowers, coming to grips with the history that he's got with his dad, what happened to his mom. It's unfortunate, Perry Moore passed away before he actually wrote anything else. This was his one and only novel. When he passed away, Showtime was actually looking at adapting this into a series, and that never happened. But this is a really good example of superhero YA right here. So, pass up a superhero movie and read this book.
Okay, my next recommendation, I imagine anyone who's listening to this podcast already has read this series and knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin. Now, I don't even know what I really need to say about this. It's amazing. I love these characters so much. If you haven't given them a try, please do. You will not be disappointed. It's just amazing. The series starts out with Marianne Singleton when she arrives in the big city in San Francisco, circa the mid-70s. Yeah. Mid to late. Oh gosh, maybe I should look here. Wait, I don't know. Mid to late 70s, and she finds her way in the city, finding friends and love and adventure. Some crazy-ass adventures. Mm-hmm. The stuff that happens to Marianne Singleton over the series, it is bananas. Anyway, I highly recommend these books. Amazing characters, amazing stories, amazing series of televised miniseries movies that came out several years ago. Love them to pieces. Also, if you've read all of the books in the original series, be sure to check out Armistead's most recent books, where he takes a look at the lives of Michael Tolliver and Mary Ann and Anna Madrigal as they are living now in the present. The most recent book, The Days of Anna Madrigal, is, oh my God. If you love these characters as much as I do, you will ugly cry hard. It's an amazing, amazing book. So please check out anything, really, by Armistead Maupin and Tales of the City.
Yeah, you won't go wrong with that. That's easily, 9 books to get you through between the original 6 of Tales and the 3 updates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, if I had to pick a place to go on vacation for the summer, or really any time, it would be St. Nacho's.
I agree.
This fictional town that Z.A. Maxfield created in Southern California is a delightful place. The original St. Nacho's sold me on her as a writer, with its tale of this man who is essentially broken and looking for a place to hide out from his family and his problems, and he wanders into St. Nacho's, where he is transformed by the town and its citizens and the nice guy that he meets. Mm-hmm. There are, I believe it's 4 books in this series. Please write another one, Sam. I know you're thinking about it. They've also recently come out on audio, so you can get your audio groove on if you choose to. But there's so much good stuff in these books about each of the men who comes to St. Nacho's needs some kind of redemption. And they find it there. And it's a town where you really wish you could just go and hang out because everybody treats each other like you would want them to in a town of this size. It's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. Life should be like this in so many ways.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
St. Nacho's, book 1 through book 4 from Zam. Go get them.
So I know Jeff and I have been suggesting a lot of series, and my next pick won't disappoint. I recommend another retro read. If you haven't given Victor J. Bannis's The Man from Camp series a try, I highly recommend you do. Victor wrote these books in the late 60s as paperback originals, and he dashed them off. I think in his autobiography he mentions writing them very quickly, off the cuff. He didn't give them a whole lot of thought, but oh my God, they're all so weird and wacky and entertaining. The books and the series in particular is sort of a takeoff on the spy-fi craze that was going on at the time with James Bond and everything else. The title itself is a take on The Man from U.N.C.L.E., to give you an idea of where this particular series starts off. The first book, That Man from Camp, is actually pretty tame. It's a pretty standard detective story about Jackie Holmes, who has a secret office in a seedy gay bar, and his attack poodle and his fancy car and he drives around and solves crimes. And the series gets weirder after that. There's one where he fights a megalomaniac in an underwater city. There is one where called Gothic Gay, which has a really ridiculous sort of mystery Agatha Christie vibe, where Jackie and some of his compatriots from previous books are all lured to a remote castle and they're stranded there, and they have to solve a murder. And I love all of the books that I've read so far in the series. Most of them have been reprinted in various collections, and you can find those online. So give The Man from Camp a try. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
I'm surprised to hear he dashed those off.
Yeah, he wrote them real quick.
That's amazing, because they read like well thought out. It's not really what I'm headed for, because they are well thought out, but they read like something that took some time to put all the pieces together and construct it all. So that's really cool. So my last one to go on the action adventure route is Fathoms 5, and there's a series currently of 3 books, and word on the street is that Jeffrey Knight's working on a 4th one, which is really good. This series is essentially like Indiana Jones with a bunch of hot gay men at the center of it. Professor Fathom has gathered these 5 guys. They're all hunks. There's like a model and art expert. There's a biologist and physician. There's a cowboy who's, of course, an expert in cartography, because why wouldn't you be? A college student football star who's majoring in ancient history, and then just an adventurer for hire along for the ride. These boys get into the middle of some crazy adventures, chasing things around the world. It's very, I think there's a little James Bond in there, there's a little Indiana Jones in there, and just a whole lot of just amazing adventures with some really hot, steamy stuff going on too, because, you know, when you're captured by somebody, you do need to take them to bed to help get out of that problem. These books, though, are so much fun to read. I love everything about them. Can't wait for the next one. Hurry up, Jeff.
What's the first book called?
Fathoms 5, The Cross of Sins.
Yeah.
When we link to these in the show notes, you'll see a much more current cover than what I'm holding up, because this is the vintage first edition release that I have from Star Books, and it's since been reprinted and re-released by, I believe, Wild City actually did the re-release on it. So yeah, pick this up.
So my final recommendation is for the ladies, or specifically for the ladies who love the ladies. I'm going to talk about Anne Bannon and her series. I'm all about series. I'm so sorry. That's all that I
put a lot of series out there too. About.
Okay, this is series for the summer. How about, let's just rename the segment. Series to get you through the summer.
I did have one standalone.
You had a couple of standalones.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I know I've spoken about Anne Bannon in the past. I still highly recommend the Bebo Brinker Chronicles. Mm-hmm. They're amazing. She is the queen of lesbian paperbacks. We have had the opportunity to see Anne in person only once. Once.
Yeah.
And she's remarkable. She's amazing. The books are phenomenal. The first book in the series, called Odd Girl Out, follows Beth and Laura and their tentative blossoming romance in college. I am when I read this book, I was a very young gay man in my 20s. I had just come out, so I really identified with Laura as she was exploring the gay world as it was in the early 1950s. And let's just say Laura is a bit of a drama queen. Which is, I mean, in context of the story, is perfectly understandable, because she's experiencing everything for the very first time, and it's an incredibly big deal. There's a lot of emotion that goes with all of that. I was such a Laura in my 20s. Oh my god, you have no idea. Anyway, so I really love this book and the rest of the books in this series, the Bebo Brinker Chronicles. Mm-hmm. I happen to have this old gold medal paperback edition of Odd Girl Out, but we also own an omnibus edition of that collects most of the books in the series in a single volume. So, look for that. I believe, actually, all of the books in the series were also reprinted by Cleese Press as well. So, Anne Bannon, check her out. These books are really, really great.
And if you have places where you could find the old paperbacks, all those covers are so good. There's such good pulp paperbacks there. So, those are some of our summer recommendations. Of course, we'd love to hear what your recommendations might be. And encourage you to leave those in the show notes for episode 34. And of course, everything that we've recommended, we will hook up on Amazon, so you can click and go buy to your heart's content.
And where can they find all these links?
BigGayFictionPodcast.com.
Awesome. All right. I think that'll do it for this week's episode.
I think it does. We will say that coming up next week for episode 35, we have Richard Pearson here, who will talk about his debut novel, The Role. Plus, we also kick off the 2016 GRL blog tour with Jamie Reese.
Oh, that should be awesome.
Yeah, it'll be a good show next week.
Okay.
All right, so you guys enjoy this first unofficial week of summer, and we'll see you back here next week.
See you next time, guys.
Thank you for listening to Jeff and Will's Big Gay Fiction Podcast. New episodes are available every Monday at iTunes and other major podcast outlets. While there, subscribe to the show and please consider leaving a review. For detailed show notes, links, and to sign up for the monthly newsletter, visit biggayfictionpodcast.com.